So I have my friend here. I don't know how I want to introduce you. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Well, my screen name, I guess, is Heathen or JW Research. It's kind of a lame screen name, I guess, but it's interesting. I just read like a Watchtower article from like 63 or something the other day, and they referred to all of basically anyone outside of Jehovah's organization as heathendom. So I guess it's fitting.
Really? Which you say that was like from the 60s?
Yeah, 63 Watchtower 63 August 1. It's from the I actually found the article from a book I'm reading called Apocalypse Delayed. I don't have the resource like on my desk, but yeah, like basically anyone outside of Jehovah's Organ. So
That is
I am
super fascinating. I love it. So to make a long story short, I guess you were a Jehovah's Witness until recently, right? Why don't you tell me about your past with that?
okay. So I actually was not officially disfellowshipped. I disassociated from Jehovah's Witnesses about 16, 17 months ago. Um, I was not raised as a Jehovah's Witness. I was actually my mom was Lutheran because her mom was Lutheran and or
Wait, I lost
reformist.
you for a second there. You say your best friend was Episcopalian growing up?
Yeah, that's correct.
Mm.
But anyway, that's really beside the point. Anytime I went to church, like either with my mom or my best friend, I always felt like totally creeped out, like I just didn't belong, or just something really irked me, like something didn't feel right. And so basically, since I was a teenager, I've been
Okay, since you were a teenager, you were atheist roughly. So to clarify, your mom was Lutheran, and basically everybody
correct.
in that line was Lutheran, right?
Correct.
And what was your dad?
So my dad, so that's interesting. On my dad's side of the family, I actually had an aunt, and her sons were Jehovah's Witnesses, but they were much older and never really saw them, at Christmas or Thanksgiving or anything, of course, because they never came around
Right,
because celebrate the holidays.
right.
So I never had a really close relationship with my dad's extended family. My dad was not. He was just. He wasn't agnostic. He was just basically lazy.
Just didn't really want to go, basically. Didn't want to go to church
Yeah,
and all that other
yeah.
stuff.
He wasn't religious. Let's just leave it.
Got you. So, some of his family was Jehovah's Witness, though. Is that where your entry into it came from? Like, is that how you found yourself in the religion, or what was the story there?
No, actually, my entry into this religion came through my wife. So, when I was in college, I met my soon-to-be wife, and she was raised Jehovah's Witness. However, she was inactive at the time. She had left like 17, um, primarily due to lifestyle. She wanted to party. She wanted to go out and have fun,
Sure,
and
I experienced that too.
so yeah, sure. So she was never baptized, basically, as a youth.
Okay. So, 17 years old, your wife kind of walks away from the religion, I guess, right? Is what you said?
That's correct, and then when she was in college down where I lived, and that's where we met. She was about 19, I was about 22,
Oh,
23.
22. Okay. All right. So you meet your wife and she kind of has this affiliation with Jehovah's Witnesses. You already kind of had that opening into it. So I guess that's kind of the door you needed to walk through to get into it.
Not exactly. It's a little more complicated than that, and I don't really wanna, like, tell you the long version of the story, but, basically, as our relationship went on, she felt longing, like, she wanted to get back into it, and she did. Like, she started studying again, like, right as we got married. I didn't really know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses, despite the fact that I had some family members that were. So, I was still not studying, not having anything to do with organization. Meanwhile, we get married, and about a year or so later, she got baptized.
So it was a year or two after you guys had gotten married, right?
Correct.
So she had been like
Um,
going to meetings that whole time and everything, I guess.
she had been going to memorials every year. What had happened is she went to a convention after the year after we got married, And somebody literally turned around and said, "Hey, do you want to study the Bible with me?"
Mm.
Like, okay. And so she started studying. We were together. She had married a, unbeliever, an
Hmm.
unbeliever, whatever you want to call it. And I don't know if it was like Christian guilt or what she felt exactly, but it's really beside the point. She got baptized. I went to her baptism. Our marriage continued and started to have struggles in our marriage because of our different belief systems.
Okay. So that's kind of the opening that you needed to decide to take part in it. I mean, at this point it seems
It
like
is.
your dad didn't really believe it. Your mom was kind of a Lutheran. Um
Yeah, it really had nothing to do with my childhood at
mm,
all, honestly, Telltale. It had only to do with life. Now, bear in mind, like her family were not Jehovah's Witnesses, only her mother was. So it was like two of them against the world.
right.
And as our marriage continued, he kind of like put subtle hints and pressures like, hey, do you want to come to the memorial? Hey, do you want to come to the assembly? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, I was very reluctant. Again, I didn't know anything about this religion. One year, he went to the memorial and was like, hey, why don't you look at this, look at that? And I did. And then I did my own independent research and I was like, this is not a thing that I want to be a part of. And at that
Really?
point, I had major reservations about our relationship,
Right.
honestly.
We're unsure
Um,
about where it was going, and because I guess because of the clash with the belief system, right?
but let me give you an example.
Sure.
So, when we were dating, got married, like, we'd hang out, we'd party. She'd play video games with me. We'd have a glass of wine. And then after this change, it was more like we were separate lives. Like
Mm.
I would be sitting on the couch, playing ever Zelda, and she would be like in the room reading the Bible. And it started, there were these like little fissures in our relationship, and that
I started to lose you there at the end. You said there were a lot of fissures because, from my understanding, you were saying that you would be playing Zelda and she would be reading the Bible in the bedroom, right?
that's correct. So, over time, our relationship started to deteriorate, and we had, at that point, she was pregnant. So we
Okay.
had, yeah, we have two kids together. We're no longer married. And again, this is kind of a long, drawn out introduction,
No,
but
no, it's fine. Go ahead. I am here for the duration.
so we have our first child, and things took a turn for the worse. She basically moved out, and at that point, I'm like, well, the only thing that's going to make her happy is if I'm a Jehovah's Witness. And so I went to the memorial, and an attendant actually came up to me and he's like, hey, do you want to study the Bible? And I was like, okay, sure. So I started studying, and this was about 10 years ago. Okay.
Right.
So I started studying, again, not raised in the truth, knowing nothing about really Christianity in general, much less Jehovah's Witnesses. And we just got into it. And it took a really long time, dude. I mean, like, I studied the teach book for probably 2 years.
Right. That's the Bible Teach book. What is the full
The
name? I cannot remember that for the life. Oh, it's
what does the Bible really teach?
that's
The
it.
yellow book?
That's
Yeah, the
it.
yellow book, not the new one, not the gray book. And every single chapter, like there were just so many questions. I'm what does this mean? Like, how do you know this is true? I need more evidence. I need more information to believe that this is true. And my Bible teacher couldn't really give me a straight answer. And so I just had to convince myself that that it was accurate, that, this is the way the Bible is supposed to be interpreted. This is what the Bible really teaches. So I was basically kicking and fighting against this thing the whole time, right? Like you and we have two very different experiences.
Right.
Like I was not raised in the truth. I didn't have a religious upbringing or background, and I'm just kind of cynical at heart. And so every single thing that came up, like, creation, Noah's Ark, Revelation, what have you, was like, really? Like, like what reasonable person can find truth in this?
Right.
Um,
And you were how old at this point? Roughly 24, 25, somewhere in there?
I was closer to 30. I was in
Okay.
my late 20s. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
So you were studying to get baptized at this point, or you were kind of just studying because you had a lot of questions, basically, right?
well, no, I was studying to to get fix my marriage. That was the whole intention. Like, I never really intended to become a Jehovah's Witness. I just wanted to have a family. Like,
Sure.
I just wanted to be happy. And I thought it would make me happy. And I thought if I pushed my doubts down, and convinced myself that this was the truth, that everything would be okay. Well, of course, now I know that that's not the case. But at the time, I was naive.
Right.
Anyway, um, she did come back. My wife and my son, they came back. I was studying. I became an unbaptized publisher. I started going out in service. Blah blah blah. And after a couple more years, I think there's another book, like Keep Yourself in God's
Hmm.
Love. Are you familiar with that
I don't
one?
think so. I can pull it up though real fast. Is it the gray one that has like the picture of the beach?
Yeah, it has like clouds on the front, like a
Yes.
gray. Yeah.
Yep.
So that's like the second book. I don't know what the um, teaching is now. Like, I think you just have to go through the main first book, but I could be wrong on that. Anyway, we go through the second book, and at that point, I qualify for baptism. So I'm like, 33, 34 years old, and I'm getting baptized. And, I'm in my mind, I'm like, this is going to be good for our family. This is going to be good for me. And I, again, like had a lot of doubts, even leading up to baptism, but I just had to like push those aside. And I did. I got baptized.
Right. And so how old were you? You said you were about 34, 35 when you got baptized?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
how did getting baptized affect your life from that moment on? Like how did things get better for you? Did they get worse?
They got worse. In fact, I'll tell a brief, like, kind of narrative here.
Okay.
So at my baptism, when they like dumped me into the pool, and I don't know why this happened, but I came up and I started hysterically laughing. I um I don't know if I was like in denial or if it
Right.
was just like the absurdity of the situation, but I looked up and there's water like coming down over my eyes and my face. And I look up and one of my elders is like there and he's like inspecting the whole like situation because it's
Yeah.
all very official.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what the hell have I done?
Had
Like,
regrets from the moment you went under the water, huh? Oh
basically
man.
so. I mean, and things, I mean, honestly, just really went downhill from there.
Mm.
Like, our marriage just continued to deteriorate. We argued a lot. I tried to keep in line with the direction from the governing body. I tried to maintain a regular Bible study.
Mm.
I always took the family to meeting. I tried to set a fine example, blah, blah, blah. But it was never good enough. It was never good enough for her. And after a while, um, I think we both knew that this was not a good fit for me, and we got divorced.
So what was the thing that what was the straw that broke the camel's back? Why is it that it didn't seem to be a good fit? And also, how long ago did all of this happen when you kind of walked away from it?
So the divorce happened 2 years ago,
Okay.
and I actually continued to attend meetings for about 8 months
Mm.
after that. I've actually only disassociated from Jehovah's Witnesses for about 13 months. So I've been on the outside for about a year. And again, I was never officially disfellowshipped, although I've been disfellowshipped in practice. Like, I see them on the street, I see them at the grocery store, and they won't look me in the eye. They don't return emails or phone calls. That's what disfellowshipping looks like, even to someone who chooses to willingly leave the organization by means of a letter
Right.
disassociate. Yeah.
I actually know exactly what you're talking about. So, and I imagine a lot of the audience does too. But what does it feel like to you when that kind of thing happens?
Well, fortunately, I knew, like, I saw this coming like miles away. So I knew like I was going to be shunned. And so I set myself up in a couple of ways so that I wouldn't have to experience the sheer like loss of family and friends and support system and structure and everything. So even as I was attending meetings, like in 2017,
Mm.
like I sought out a support group. I was going to therapy. I was reading, everything, philosophy, etc. I was just trying to prepare myself for a life. And again, I had a life before this organization, so I kind of had a taste of that previously, but I was preparing myself for success. And I think I've achieved that on the outside, in a relatively short period of time, but most don't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the deal. I mean, this structure, this hierarchy is set up in such a way that if you choose to disassociate, or if you do something that is a disfellowshipping offense, right, you're going to be shunned. And all of that is going to be pulled away from you. You're going to lose potentially your family, your friends, your support system. Everything that you know overnight will just be gone.
Yeah. Just it's like the rug is pulled out from under you, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But lucky for you, I guess it sounds like you took the right steps to prepare for that eventuality as best as you could, right?
Well, I think what happened, if I go back just like chronologically, is I was still going to meetings, excuse me, and I stumbled upon like the Cedars channel. In particular, there was one video where Lloyd Evans is at Disneyland. Have you seen this one?
Yes,
Where
I
he's
have
like,
actually seen that.
okay, so just to give context, he's like basically reverse witnessing to this cart that's set up in Florida. And he's just like having a conversation with the guy. He's not really trying to convince him of anything. He's just saying like, this was my experience. This is your experience. Can we meet
Yeah.
halfway? And of course he's willing, he's lived both sides of the coin. But, this publisher is like, well, just come to the meetings, come have a study, come do this, come do that, because that's all he knows. He's been indoctrinated since birth to pull worldly ones in to the organization, right? So it's not about having a conversation to him. It's about like convincing the other person to come to your perspective. And that's just wrong.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's just the wrong angle to take it. I mean, when we enter into a society, it seems to me we kind of enter into a social contract. Like there's a possibility I could be wrong, there's a possibility you could be wrong, and we have certain things we agree upon. We're not going to be violent, we're not going to manipulate or deceive or lie in the conversation, but Jehovah's Witnesses seem to have kind of disregarded that because they believe that they're right. So it's like ends justify the means, theocratic warfare in their case. I don't know if you've seen
Yeah.
any of that.
Yeah, and I'm not like calling out this particular brother or
Right.
anything. Like it's from the top down. I mean, he can't help it. I mean, that's what he's been taught his entire life. The problem is at the top. And the governing body and the the society and everything dictates this entire structure that completely controls people's lives. Like when I was, this was before I was baptized, but like there was a situation where I was studying and my wife was like, hey, you're still listening to, whatever, System of a Down or something.
Okay.
And you have all these, this huge collection of zombie movies. You have to get rid of all this shit.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, why? And she basically told me that I couldn't even sell my zombie movie collection because the demonic influence
Mm,
would, would impact someone else.
that is a
She's a she,
shame.
it is because they're probably pretty valuable today, but um, y- she's rational. Like she is a reasonable, rational
Mm,
person, like at her base, but she's been so, I don't like to use the term brainwashed, but she's
mm,
been so programmed
sure.
to believe this institutionalized, I don't know. It's very frustrating.
Would you say an institutionalized shoot, no, we have to work this out. We have to figure out the word is. I don't know that brainwashing is the right word either. I think
It's
Stephen
like,
Hassan talks about that a little bit.
yeah, yeah. It's just like a structure. Like
Yeah.
there are no hard and fast rules. Like, my kids play Pokemon. They
Hmm.
they read Harry Potter. They play Zelda. But they're Jehovah's Witnesses. They're being raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, and I have no control over that. I can only
Right.
control like their how they think.
Yeah.
We just basically don't talk. I mean, living, co-parenting with this Jehovah's Witness, I can't really even explain like what that's like in 30 minutes,
I
but
can't even imagine.
it's real tough, man.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like they have this one system of rules there, and then here they have like, reality.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to disparage her household or anything like that. It's just like her rule set is based upon something else. It's not based upon her own like internal beliefs or anything like that. So if we want to play, you know, Fortnite or something, we're going to play Fortnite.
Right.
But to her, that's bad. That's a bad thing.
Right. So that's really interesting. You touched on something that I find fascinating because when I was kind of coming out of the religion, I had a daughter with the mother, and the mother was not a Jehovah's Witness. I was not a Jehovah's Witness any longer either, but I still believed it. So I'm coming at it from the other perspective where I was trying to raise my daughter as a Jehovah's Witness, and the mother was fighting me on it. It's so fascinating to hear the other side and think about the other
Yeah.
side now. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. And, I think leading up to our discussion, there's like another aspect of the story really haven't touched on. I'd like to devote some time to if
Sure.
we can. So after I got baptized, I got this job, right?
Mm.
This job was with some Jehovah's Witnesses that were not in my direct congregation, but they were like friends of friends, basically. Excuse me. And I was doing basically IT support for this company. They had extended this job offer to me. I didn't really know anything about the industry at the time, but basically, this company was a financial services company, like not a credit card company, but you basically like a merchant services
Mm.
company, right? So when you are a business and you need to accept credit cards, you go to a merchant acquirer and they sign you up, to accept credit cards so that you have a relationship with, Visa, MasterCard, whatever, so that you can accept credit cards. Anyway, so I got this job and it was great. It was a really well-paying job. Everyone there was Jehovah's Witness. I was very happy in the position. After a year or so, this company that I worked for actually got a contract with the branch office,
Mm.
right? So the branch office, for those who don't know, is like the headquarters or the compound of Jehovah's Witnesses in New York, and they determine all the financial affairs of the entire sect, of the entire religion.
Right.
This company that I worked for received a contract to provide all the credit card processing for all the circuit assemblies for the entire United States.
That is a
So,
massive commitment, I imagine.
uh, not only that, but it's a huge amount of money. I
Yeah.
mean, you have no idea. So,
Yeah.
I mean, merchant services companies only make like 1 or 2% per transaction. But if you multiply that times, a couple million, then you're talking pretty good money.
Yeah.
So anyway, my job was essentially to set up credit card equipment at, every year Jehovah's Witnesses have 3 like major events they attend. Like they have 2 assemblies and then 1 major convention. So I did the 2 big assemblies, and we did them across the entire country. So I would set up like all the accounts. I would set up all of the processing, all of the equipment, etc. And the company that I worked for would, basically skim off the top. I didn't know this at the time, but my employer had actually had a history. Again, he was a Jehovah's Witness, but he had been disfellowshipped a couple of times. Once was for unrelated reasons. It was for like his wife cheating or something. But he actually committed embezzlement as well while he was a Jehovah's Witness. He basically embezzled a whole bunch of money from a whole bunch of people that he has not paid back to this day.
That's not good.
It's not good at all. And I didn't know any of this, but the branch office did. And they gave him this contract anyway to do this work. I think he currently served.
I didn't know that they knew that.
They did. And he currently serves as like a traveling speaker. He's like a ministerial servant. He might even be an elder at this point. I don't know. He fired me a year ago.
Right. Why did he fire you, by the way, as a quick aside? Was it for religious reasons or?
Well, yeah. So after I disassociated, he found out like pretty much right away. And I saw this coming a mile away. So I decided to enroll in college because I knew my days were numbered. Like I knew he was going to fire me for not being a Jehovah's Witness because literally everyone that worked for him was. And so he found out, and he's like, you can't have anything to do with any of these accounts anymore. I was like, okay, is that discrimination? I don't know. Like I'm just asking. And he was furious. I mean, he basically fired me on the spot. And I inquired with several state and federal agencies, and they were like, well, we'll do an investigation. I can't really get into like the logistics and the legal matters, but my case was dismissed. I mean, they found in his favor, they found that my termination was not related to my religious affiliation,
really?
Which from my experience, from my perspective, is not true.
It seems kind of obvious at its face, just having been involved in the religion and knowing that the tactics that they use and the association that they have with outsiders and things like that, it just seems obvious that was the case at its face. But
well, I mean, on its face, but I don't know if there are any listeners out there that are, that have read the Bible but I actually posited this to him one time as I was reading the Bible, and the scripture rang really curiously to me, and it's Mark 11:15. The scripture says, and if I may quote, "They now came to Jerusalem. There he entered." This is Jesus. "There he entered into the temple and started to throw out those selling and buying in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves." Basically, what's happening here is these merchants are converting currency, right? Like people will come in with different form, either bartering system or different currencies, and they'll change them into different currencies. They're providing a service. And in exchange for that service, they'll take some money for it, right? And I was like, isn't this exactly what we're doing? We're in the temple, like we're at this assembly, and people are donating thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and we're taking a cut of that. Like, aren't we doing the exact same thing? And I actually asked him this. Like, I had the balls to do that.
Right. What did he
And
say?
well, of course he, like reasoned it, he
Yeah.
cited some other scripture or something, but I still have doubts to this day that not only at the local congregation level, at the district level, at the regional level, but really at the Bethel level,
Mm.
that it's all about the money.
Yeah.
And I mean, this. I mean,
Yeah.
you've talked about this in several videos, but um, they have tax exempt status. All this money is tax exempt. Where is all this money going? Is it going to pay to protect pedophiles?
That's what it looks like to
It
me.
is it going to pay lawyers to sue for fair use, as we've seen in the
Right.
case of Dark Spilver? I mean, how much longer does this have to go on before people are like, okay,
I
like,
know. See,
what the hell?
I feel like the big issue with it is the fact that they basically tell people to be super careful about what they read online. You're not supposed to go to certain websites, things like that. And that enables them to get away with things without being challenged from within. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, freedom of information is like their worst enemy,
Yeah.
and that's what happened to me. Like I started, I was looking to the internet for answers. Actually, I had questions. Like I wanted to prove to myself that this was the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to believe that their doctrine was accurate, that this was the one and only true religion. And everywhere I looked, it pointed to the opposite. It pointed to the fact that the religion was founded, basically by one dude, who was a prophet, or a
Yeah.
so-called prophet. And then, you have Rutherford and, the other guys, Rutherford was an alcoholic, and it just goes on and on and on. There's just and of course we see that today with Morris, at the liquor store.
Yep. I saw that too. That was
Oh my
funny.
God. I mean, it's funny, but it's also sad. I
It
mean,
is. You know, these people's money that I know personally, I can tell you this for sure. My mom is on a pension, and I know she's donating money to the Watchtower Society every month. I have to imagine that that was some of her money going to that cashier when Tony Morris bought all of that liquor. You know, it's really heartbreaking.
yeah, I mean, it's just not like any liquor. I mean, it's like $900 of top
Yeah.
shelf, single malt scotch. Okay.
Yep.
So, and I mean, they've gone in, you can read it however you want, but that is the activity, and this is my opinion, that's the activity of an alcoholic.
Right.
When you buy and you take it out of the box even, and you're by yourself, and it's,
Yeah.
it's not a good, it's
it's a
not a good
lot of
look,
red
man.
flags. Yeah.
I just want to leave with one thought.
Okay.
So my friend came over the other night and we were talking about all this stuff because I'm working on, like, I'm doing a research paper on on Kingdom songs right now. I'm writing a memoir, and we're writing an album about like my experience. And I was like, hey buddy, what do I say to my wife to convince her that she's wrong? To just say, hey, this has to stop. You
Yeah.
can't be a Jehovah's Witness. You can't raise my kids as Jehovah's Witnesses. And he said something really poignant. He said, well, saying to her that she can't be a Jehovah's Witness is like her saying to you that you can't be an atheist.
Mm.
And I really have thought about that this week. And, I think the level of programming is so intense that our only hope is to prevent future persons from entering into this relationship with this cult. I'm just going to
Right.
say cult,
Right.
because that's the only way we're going to be able to make a change. Like I see these, what is it, like these flash mobs at Kingdom halls and assemblies where they I agree with you. Like, I don't think that's the right way to go about it, because they're most likely not going to change their minds.
For reference, we're talking about people who like go in and do Kingdom Hall crashing, where they interrupt the meeting.
Yeah,
and things.
crashing. Yeah, crashing, right. I couldn't think of it. But um they call us we're apostates, right?
Hmm.
So they call us mentally diseased. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think that's true. Like, I think we are mentally diseased because I personally, I can't speak for you, but like, I've dealt with a lot of trauma over
Yeah.
the last 18 months. Like,
Most
I've had
definitely.
to deal with a lot of shit. Like, I've gone to therapy. Like, I have a support group. I cry when I hear like old songs that I used to sing at the Kingdom Hall.
Yeah.
Like, this stuff is deep. Like, it's really, really hard to get out of, like really hard.
Yeah.
And to expect like a born in the truth, dyed in the wool Jehovah's Witness to leave all of that, it's a tall order, man.
It is. I 100% agree with you, and I don't know that I would have ever escaped if I hadn't been kicked out. I may still be in there. So I guess that I will leave it on this note too. Actually, since you're leaving on a note, I would say instead of not celebrating any holidays, I never celebrated my birthday, never celebrated Christmas. Celebrate all of them and make your disfellowshipping day one of those holidays. I celebrate the day that I got disfellowshipped because it was the day I got out of it.
Cool. Well, mine's coming up. Mine is June 18th, so maybe
Throw a party.
we'll have a party
Yes,
or something.
definitely. Well, congratulations. I'm glad
Cool.
that you found your
Yeah.
way out. And thank you for talking to me about your story. It's been
Yeah.
really fascinating. We'll talk again, though, okay?
Yeah, this is a great opportunity. I thank everyone for listening. Really privileged to be on the channel and everything on the podcast. So thanks a lot.
Yep. All right. We'll talk to you next time.
All right, see ya.